Hello, I'm ABX Toycat, and welcome back to another video. Today, I figured because of how many of you really like your Minecraft history and absolutely love seeing just how different Minecraft features used to be back in the day, I figured it'd be kind of cool to take some of the older features of Minecraft, which have all been around since the classic phase, and show you all of the changes that have happened in the almost 7 years of their development, and just show you just how different some things in Minecraft have gone over time. Hopefully you do all enjoy this video. If you do, please do like it and let me know, because it helps out the channel a lot, and lets me do like this kind of different history-based content. And also, yeah, let's get straight into it, shall we, by mentioning that all of these changelog and the dates and their version numbers all come from the big Minecraft wiki changelog, so if you ever want to check out just all the little changes, you can do that on the big version history they do have, because it goes all the way back to pre-classic. Anyway, with that said, it's the most comprehensive one I can find, because let's get straight into this with sand, which was only added in classic 0.0.14a01, which admittedly was, again, close to 7 years ago now, but still, it was only added just then because gravel was already in the game, and they decided they wanted another block. So the thing about sand is you might think how much can really change about it, but actually quite a lot, because when it was first added, it looked like this instead of its current texture. It used to, have a different gravity effect. It was still affected by gravity, but of course, when you placed it on the side of thing, instead of it, falling down slowly like it would if it was, instead of you being able to see it fall, basically, it would instantly fall to the lowest, block that it could fall on. So it would skip all the air blocks and fall to the lowest. So if you were 100 blocks in the air, you place a sand on the side. Instead of placing it on the side and then slowly falling down, it would just be instantly placed at the bottom, which is a very bizarre idea for a block, and it had some bizarre stuff to look at, but that's how things used to work back in the classic version of Minecraft with this, and also gravel 2, which existed before it. Anyway, with that said, yeah, that's how it used to work, and it also used to be a lot rarer back in the classic phase, because it only used to be found in and around beaches, basically, but there was no official beach. So if you were near the edge of water, you'd sometimes find some sand below the water, and sometimes next to the water, but still, only rarely, and only one fix. So yeah, sand was kind of a rare block that worked as a gravity-based block, like gravel, but that was a little bit harder to find, which is a very unique place for it to be in the game, but that's how it was back in the classic phase of Minecraft. Things, of course, changed in the in-dev phase, the next phase, because basically it had its first crafting recipe on the January 29th update of 0.31, where sand was actually used to craft TNT for the first time, which is pretty cool if you ask me. And also, it was made so islands would have sand, which made sand a little bit less rare to find. So yeah, sand was made less rare, and it got its first crafting recipe. Pretty good times for an in-dev, but still, again, very massively different to what we know today, and a lot of that behavior didn't come till much later, because basically in InfDev, sand was actually removed for a little bit. That's right, there was a month and a half of InfDev, infinite development, where sand was just removed, because while Notch was working on the map test to make stuff happen, presumably he decided sand was just too much of a mess to get in there, and it was just removed for a solid month and a half until after Infinite Worlds had been re-added. So after Infinite Worlds were actually in the game, then sand was re-added to the game, and then a couple of months later, it had a couple of other big changes, so that when sand fell, it would fall slowly and realistically, if you will, and also they made it so if sand falls on something like a torch or a railway or any non-solid object, it would actually drop itself as an item rather than just being destroyed the way it was before. So yeah, again, a couple of big changes. They made it so sand actually falls the way it does now, and they made it so if it falls on something, it doesn't just vanish, which is kind of weird to me. That's the way things would work before, but it was how things work. So with that said, beta was the next phase it got changed in. It was untouched during all of alpha, but during beta, again, a lot of behavior that we assume has just been around forever was added then, because sandstone was only added in 1.2, again, craftable from sand, and sandstone only naturally generated from 1.3 beta onwards. That's right, sand only existed during all of that, sand's only existed since beta 1.3, sorry, and the crazy thing about sand is although it existed in beaches until beta 1.8, in 1.8 they actually removed it from beaches. The reason there were so many gravel beaches in that update is because they decided to just remove sand beaches and have only gravel beaches because of a weird little bug with the way it generated. So that said, there was actually again added in the 1.1 official release, so there was actual beaches because they added it as a biome. The way they did it before was apparently too buggy, so they made beaches a biome, and that's why today in Minecraft you can find a beach or lots of sand in between any biome and the edge of the water. You can find a jungle with some sand before the edge. You can find even like a cold biome, like a cold taiga with some sand between the edge, and you can find pretty much any biome with a beach in between there because it counts as its own biome right now. So yeah, with that said, that's what happened in 1.1. In 1.0 though, another big change happened because they made it so that the sand texture was the current one. I cannot tell the difference between the old texture and the new one, but they are apparently distinct, and maybe my eyes just aren't good enough at telling a difference and stuff. But yeah, there's two distinct textures, and one was added in 1.0, which is the one we all know and perhaps love today. I hope you don't love sand texture too much, but yeah, with that said, that's what happened in 1.0 official release. Later on in the official release in 1.4, they made the sand have a slightly different sand we walked on. Again, a very subtle change. And then in 1.7, red sand was added, which again, quite a big change, made the mesa biome have its whole own appearance. With 1.8, of course, adding red sandstone, but also making it so sand textures would, when it wasn't actually spawned, they'd rotate it a little bit to kind of make beaches and deserts look a little bit more realistic. And then finally, the last change sand has had was in 1.9, so very recently, they made it so that sand could be randomly found in desert temple chests. So yeah, that's all of the changes that have happened to sand. It's kind of crazy to think that it used to have no crafting recipes, it used to be pretty rare, and it didn't used to have the same gravity effects as it did today, but that's actually how sand has changed. But, that's just the least of the three here, because the next one we're moving on to is a mob. So, the mob we're going to be talking about is the pig mob. So, the pig mob is kind of famous because obviously during its early phases of development, it actually created the creeper by accident, and we'll get into that later. But first, let's show you the very first texture the pig had when it was added in 0.24, the first one of the first survival tests. So here's what the pig used to look like. As you can see, a lot derpier than it is today. It has kind of like a cross-eyed look. It's hilarious if you ask me, and I wish there was a way to go back to that, maybe just as a little joke, or maybe like a 1 in 100 chance that a pig would spawn that texture. Either way though, that was the old pig texture, and this, this pig model was the one that actually created the creeper, because while Notch was playing around with the pig to do some changes, he accidentally moved the legs and made them below the body, and of course the rest is history. So the pig and, the alteration of the pig is the reason for the creeper that is the most, significant icon of Minecraft today. So yeah, I still love that story that, the creeper was created entirely by accident, and yeah, it's because of the pig right here, the derpy cross-eyed pig. So that said, later on during the classic phase, the pig actually had a drop added to it. It gave you 10 points when it was killed, which was the whole point system that I've explained before. But the other interesting thing about the pig, in my opinion, is the fact that when it was killed, it didn't drop pork chops or anything like that. It dropped mushrooms. So these mushrooms, back in the day, used to actually heal you directly. So yeah, it was a very similar effect to pork chop, but yeah, it was mushrooms the pig dropped when it was killed. Exactly why that is slightly beyond me, but that's how that thing was. So with that said, the pig texture was later updated in the classic phase to have the more kind of like what we know today with this thing right here. There is another change coming, but yeah, this is what the pig actually had to make it a little bit less derpy and confusing than it was before. So with that said, the in-dev phase was where pork chops actually came into the game, and you could actually heal from killing these things, something that did make a bit more sense. And then in Imp Dev, saddles were added so you could actually ride the pig. That's right, if you've been following the video so far, you'll notice that yes, saddles were in the game before sandstone was, and I love the kind of chronology of stuff like that, where you're like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. But with that being said, Alpha was also another update where stuff was added, because pigs were properly made available for multiplayer. They weren't available until Alpha 1.0.17, and also there was a proper animation for riding pigs so that you could do that in multiplayer too. So that was the Alpha phase, again a tiny small update, but in the Beta phase they added quite a few more things that we kind of consider natural today. So for instance, in 1.5 Beta they made it so when pigs were struck by lightning they turn into a zombie pigman. Super rare event. I love the kind of dedication there, but it was a thing they added in 1.5. They made it so if you set a pig on fire and it dies from the fire damage, you get cooked pork chops. Again, an amazingly handy tip that's still useful to this day. They made the achievement for riding a pig off a cliff, because achievements were added roughly at that time. And then in 1.8 Beta, they made it so that pigs have the current model where the snout actually protrudes from the face. So yeah, if you did notice the difference between the old pig model and the new one, it is that there is a snout on the new one that just didn't exist before, and that's why the creeper doesn't have a snout on the top, just in case you ever question that kind of one right there. And then finally, a new AI system for the passive mobs so that pigs will actually run away from you when attacked. Before, if you've ever played like the early versions of Beta, they just kind of jump around and do nothing and not really care about you when you attack them. Now they'd run away from you to make it a little bit harder for you to kill a pig, especially if you're doing it with your fist. It's the same true for a cow and any other mob like that. So the official release of Minecraft also had a massive list of changes to the pigs, because of course in 1.0.0 we got the baby pig for the first time, as well as the ability to breed pigs using wheat, which again changed quite a bit. They made it so that the default mob spawner texture wasn't a pig anymore, because previously it used to just be there'd be a pig in there and then it'd spawn zombies or spiders or whatever else. That changed again in 1.2 of the full release. They made it so the pig AI changed again in 1.2, and they made it so again in 1.2 they made it so you couldn't ride your baby pigs with saddles anymore. I guess it kind of didn't make too much sense to ride a pig that small, so they removed it, which is kind of a bummer. Anyway, the 1.3 full release added it so that pigs would drop 1 to 3 pork chops instead of 0 to 2, guaranteeing that you get some form of pork chop when killing a pig, which makes them a better, kind of food resource right there. 1.4 added a massive suite of changes to the pig, because of course there was the the carrot on the stick, so you could actually direct your pig, which has made it so much better. But also they made it so if you kill a pig with a saddle, you'll get the saddle back, which again quite handy, so you don't have to just live with the same pig forever. They made it so that pigs can be bred with carrots, not wheat, and only follow the carrot if they have a carrot, to kind of make the carrot with the stick make sense. They made it so that pigs were able to jump when you're riding them, and they also made it so pigs had a slightly different sound to make all of this update come together. So 1.4, in some ways of thinking, wasn't necessarily just the pretty scary update, it was also the pretty piggy update, if you will. No, not just me. But yeah, with that said, 1.6 also introduced some more changes, because pig got the health bar on riding. In 1.8, baby pig growth was able to be accelerated, like all mobs, by feeding them their food, in this case carrots. And then finally in 1.9, they made it so that pigs can be bred with potatoes and beetroots, as well as carrots, as well as of course adding beetroots. So yeah, that's the changes pigs have had since their first inception. They used to look a little bit more derpy. Now they don't look so derpy. I mean, admittedly they do kind of look a little bit lighter. They used to not even drop pork chops. Now they can drop any form of pork chop, including the cooked one, and you can even ride them, and direct them, and you'll soon be able to breed them using brand new drops, which is pretty cool if you ask me. So yeah, that is the history of the pig right there, and let's move on finally to water, because water's also had some massive changes that people have problems believing, because for me at least it was kind of tricky to work out, because when water was first added in pre-classic, so a little bit earlier than all this other stuff, it was really just kind of a block that existed that was, it was technically water, but it didn't really function as water in any real way until it was added in classic as its official way, which looked a lot more like it does right now with this texture just here, as well as an animation attached to it, because water needs to be kind of flowing, because that's how water works. Also in this same update, they added the new water texture. They made it so there were sponges, which could remove water when they were first added, but that whole thing changed later. And yeah, that was the classic phase of water. Very simple block. If you don't know, when water was first added, this is kind of a key part of its functionality, it actually was infinite all the time. So if you had water with any blocks next to it, it basically just expand itself over and over again. And this means that if you place water somewhere high up, you could flood your entire world by just placing it up there, which is something that's kind of a problem, because the way water used to work was nowhere near as sophisticated as it was now. If you place water into a hole, it would slowly fill the hole and fill the entire cave, and there'd be nothing you could do about it. It would just spread into more infinite blocks, because again, there was no kind of distinction between the water source block and the water blocks flowing from it. It was just a water source block flowed and make other water source blocks, which flow and can make other ones, and it meant you had infinitely expanding water, which was kind of a problem until in dev they fixed it, and they added finite water for the first time, so that if you wanted to have a finite source of water, it wouldn't have to expand on forever. So yeah, for a little bit there was kind of two types of water. There was the water you'd find naturally in stuff like oceans, which would always be infinite and therefore be very tricky to get rid of, and then there'd be finite water sources which you could get yourself, again, and that exists for quite some time. And also when you had the finite water, it would have a 2/3 probability to evaporate when it expanded, and a 1/3 probability to copy. I don't even understand how that possibly works, but it's something worth mentioning right there. And then finally, the last change they made in dev to water was they made it so it spawned naturally in stuff like springs, which we don't have anymore, and lakes, which is kind of a nice little thing. So in inf dev, they kind of cancelled out that last change of the naturally generating water, and also made it so that buckets could be used to place and hold water, which was kind of a handy thing. And then in alpha, again, just a single change, which was kind of just fixing a previous change where they added lakes, but in a more kind of current, more in the way that it actually exists today. So yeah, there was they made it so there was finite water, but then kind of infinite water. Then they made it so it spawned naturally. Then they made it so it didn't, and then they kind of settled on the current system somewhere in the alpha phase. It's not entirely clear where. And because of the lack of real documentation as to where the water changes take place, it's one of those big kind of mysteries of Minecraft, because the way it used to work was just so massively different to the way it works today. And at some point that just kind of slowly changed and faded over to the current system of finite water that can expand and make infinite water, but in a very bizarre, confusing way. With that said though, let's move on to the beta phase of Minecraft, where they actually made it so that if you dropped items in flowing water, the finite sources, it would actually move a lot faster than it did before, where it previously kind of moved sluggishly. It actually moves through it a lot more realistically, and then they also made it so rain and snow could no longer fall through the water, which meant that if you had a waterproof on your house, then you wouldn't be protected from the rain and the snow until this update. So 1.6 beta, that's when the water house became a thing apparently. And then in 1.8 they also made it so there were two new biomes which would generate with the water. There was the ocean, the kind of, I guess it's the more flat ocean we know today, and also the river, which is its own biome that just cuts through all the other biomes that again you're probably quite familiar with. So yeah, they were only added in beta 1.8, and then after the full release is where most of the big changes have come. I mean, in terms of just a lot of them, because there's this big old list of changes right here. But to kind of speed you through that, I'll just go through the major changes. So there was the respiration aqua affinity enchantments, of course, kind of a big deal when enchanting was added. They also made it so the falling damage rule was changed. So if you fall in 1 deep water, you no longer die. If you don't know, before this it was kind of 2 blocks, but sometimes a little bit more than 2 blocks. After this, it was as long as you fall in some amount of water, you will not die, which is very, very handy, and that's a 1.4 change. As well as that, they made it so that if you are if there's flowing water stopping you in creative, it can't slow you down anymore. They made it so water lakes cannot spawn in deserts, but then also spawn in desert end biomes. Made it oceans a lot smaller to make the game feel like it's less of just a big ocean thing. Made it so water, ice, and portals could be seen through each other. And then the big change in 1.9 is make it so no longer shows the flowing animation when against glass or stained glass. So that said, yeah, lots and lots of big changes through water and the ice and the whole system about that in the system. But yeah, the key point I want to raise here is that water has changed a whole bunch, and in fact all 3 of these features have changed so much in the time they've been around. The pig used to look like a derp and used to give you mushrooms which you somehow ate when it died. Now there's an entirely different system. The sand used to be this weird gravity, insta block, like heavier than an anvil or instantly falling down, that didn't even care about gravity, that you'd find rarely, that didn't really look entirely different, and now it's like this. Water, again, looked different, used to just fill up anything you went nearby, and placing water anywhere used to be a very dangerous decision, and I guess to some extent it kind of is now, but it used to be like, oh, you want to flood the world? I guess you kind of can, and I think just it's kind of cool to go back and show you these 3 features. Hopefully you did enjoy today's video. It was a little bit longer than I'd anticipated. If you did like it and let me know, share if you really liked it, and subscribe if you are new around here. I make videos just like this one every single day on my channel, and if subscribed, you'll see them daily on your homepage. Thank you all very much for watching, and goodbye.